Welcome to the Real Eyes Podcast, brought to you by Dr. Jacob Wilson and Dr. Jacobi Cleaver, optometrists combining their love for eye care and movies. We pick a movie, watch it, and review it while incorporating elements of optometry as it relates to clinical cases we've encountered in practice, current trends, and recent developments across the optometric industry. Seen any good movies lately? We have.
So sit back, grab a bucket of popcorn and your glasses, and let's have some fun.
Hey, good evening, good evening. My name is Dr. Jacobi Cleaver. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Jacob Wilson, and we are Real Eyes Podcast. And we are kicking off tonight. And, just a little background on how we got started. I was actually sitting in our feature film for this evening. In the middle of the movie, I texted Jacob and said, let's do a podcast. Let's do a podcast that centers around our love for watching movies, cinema, and let's merge it with our professions. We are both practicing optometrists. I'm here, he's there. But the rule of the game is that we watch the movies. We do not discuss them with each other prior to recording this podcast, right? So you're going to get real reactions, real raw emotions. And then when we can find the optometry element, then we'll link that in to what we're talking about tonight. So, Dr. Jacob, let's get started.
Let's do it. How you guys doing? All right, let's do this. So I don't have a Sinners shirt. We're breaking down Sinners, but I wore my horror movie shirt.
Nice.
I could do for tonight. But yeah, I am super excited for this. There's few things I like in this world more than watching movies and eyeballs. So if we can bring this together, I can't think of anything better.
Right.
All right.
It hasn't been done before, so we're the first. So we'll hop right into it and let's have some fun with it, my friend. Hopefully we can get some people to join us and comment and give their feedback as well. But I have to say that we cannot promise that there will not be any spoilers this evening. So if you haven't seen Sinners, pause the podcast, go watch Sinners at least twice. Come back, listen to the podcast, and tell us what you think. All right, Jacob, the floor is yours, my friend.
100% there's going to be spoilers. So yeah, that's kind of how we're going to do this. We're going to talk about the movies. We are going to do some scary movies sometimes. And I know there's people out there who don't watch the scary movies, so maybe we can be a way for you to take in that media. So maybe don't worry about spoilers there. But I would invite everyone to go watch Sinners. It's horror, but it's so much more than that. We're going to talk about it. So let's jump right into it. So the way we're going to do it, I'm just going to talk about the movie. Jacobi, you jump in whenever you have a thought in any of the scenes I'm talking about. But basically, the movie opens up in Clarksdale, Mississippi in 1932. So the opening scene is a young man covered in blood and what looks like a bloody guitar in his hand. He walks into a church. And this scene's actually pretty tense, or I don't know if you thought so, but we don't know what's going to happen. He's bloody, and his father is there. His father's the preacher in the church, and I don't know about you, but he gave me not great vibes. I wasn't sure what he was going to do. He's like trying to comfort his son. And as he's doing that, that's when we start getting our first flashes or flashbacks, I suppose, of the violence.
Correct.
Vampires. Now,
but even before that, Jacob, if you rewind to the pre-credit scenes, it shows.
Oh, you know what? Yeah.
Right. It shows two groups of people playing music. One is the Choctaw Indians, and then the other is the community of Black folks playing music. And they set the stage fairly early. They say music can either bring you together, but it's also powerful enough to invite in evil spirits and stuff. So as we get back into that, and then this fast forwards into the scene of Sammy in the church, preacher boy. This and it just kind of takes off. What did you think, Jake? I felt like the movie took off just pretty quick.
I thought it took off pretty quick. I thought it took a while to get to the vampire stuff, but I thought that was okay. I'll talk about why I thought that was okay. But yeah, I thought it took off pretty quick. And you know what? That shame on me for forgetting that incredible opening kind of animation with the Choctaw people. I think it's supposed to be the Gullah Geechee people, but I'm not sure.
Right.
And then the Irish, they actually show some ancient Irish people in there
Correct.
too, which all of that's going to become important as we go through the movie. And then I don't know if you caught this, I won't spoil it right now, but the flashbacks that we're seeing while he's hugging his father and things like that, the vampires actually have a direct correlation to what's happening in that scene. And I didn't catch it till the third time I watched it.
Oh, really? No, I just watched it right before we started recording this again, and I didn't catch that. So now I got to go watch it for the fourth time. Perfect.
Well, the third time I watched it was in 70 millimeter IMAX. And so I was talking with my wife, and I was like, maybe that's why we caught it, because the screen was bigger and we caught more of that image. But I don't know. But yeah, I'll bring that up kind of towards the end of the movie because it becomes important. But yeah, so we see that. We don't know what's going on. It's pretty tense. And then it jumps back to it. It says 1 day earlier. Does it say 1 day earlier or 24 hours earlier?
Yeah, it says 1 day earlier. 1 day
earlier. Yeah, so 1 day earlier, and this is where we get introduced to Michael B. Jordan and his cousin Michael A. Jordan. That's what I've been saying. He does such an incredible job in this movie of playing two different characters. Man, you're a twin, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, man. And my wife was just giving me a hard time about being a twin and, just going through and watching the movies. And she was like, I think it's difficult for people to understand the dynamic of a twin relationship if you're not a twin or not around twins all the time, So, as we track through the movie, then I'll bring up some of the points that she made as well, because she was very excited about us doing this podcast, and so she's eager to be a host at some point. Yeah, man. But Michael B. Jordan did a fantastic job, man. And also a shout out to the director, man, Ryan Coogler. And I know it's going to come to streaming at some point soon, but this is a movie you have to see in a theater. Like,
I think so.
If you have a nice home theater, fine. Yeah, you got to see this in the theater. Just the camera work and the way things are moving around there. I felt like I was a part of the movie. Like I was like just a bystander watching everything happen. Like I was in Clarksdale, Mississippi with him, right? So it was pretty immersive, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. And I think what immediately drew me into the movie was the music. Everywhere you're going, the score is just amazing. It feels like you're rolling down those cotton fields and those dirt roads with them in that old old car.
Unbelievable, man. I mean, you just knew it was hot, man. But the gentlemen are wearing these suits. The ladies are wearing dresses and heels and hats. Like, hey, man, like I would be miserable even today. Like, you have to pay me to put on the suit now, man.
Yeah, I would have been in some 7-inch inseam shorts and nothing else. Running down those that dirt road. But yeah, the music pulls us in right away. We meet the twins. The first time we see them, they're standing there just looking super cool, leaning up against that old car. I don't know. I should look up what it is. I don't know if it's like the old Ford Model T or what it was, but they're leaning up against the car, and what they're doing is they're meeting.
Right, it's the 30s, so it's not like they had a lot of options back then. So it had to be a Model T. Had to.
Right, yeah, that's what I was thinking. And so they're leaning up against it, and a man comes pulling up, and he's like, "Y'all twins?" He's like, "Nah, we cousins." That's probably the most quoted part of
man, I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've been asked that. So yeah, I mean, even to this day. So maybe I'll start saying, "Nah, we cousins" as well, just like the smokestack twins here in the movie.
Yeah, I thought that was a great way to answer. And what they're doing is they're buying this old mill from this white man, and so they buy it from him. It gets a little tense. They notice that the floors have been cleaned. They ask, why have the floors been cleaned? And then he starts to get a little, I thought you boys wanted to buy this. And then they're like, ain't no boys here. But anyways, they come to it. They lay a ton of cash in his hand, and they buy the mill from him. And we learn that their goal with this mill is to open up a juke joint, which is where the majority of the movie is going to take place later on. So then they actually go and pick up Sammy, the young man that we saw at the beginning of the movie. They pick him up. His father tries to discourage him from going with them, telling him that he shouldn't be going and playing music at this juke joint for these sinners and all this stuff. But he goes anyways. He goes with his cousins. What ends up happening is they go and they basically, what you learn is that Smoke and Stack, the twins, they robbed the mobs in Chicago. So they both had been in the mobs in Chicago, and they robbed them of money, beer, everything. So they go to a truck where they have their whole stash, and then they go their separate ways. Smoke goes one way, and Stack goes with Sammy into town. Or Stack goes with Sammy down to the train station. Actually, yeah.
Right. So it's a little bit of a divide and conquer at this point. They got a lot to do in a short amount of time to do it in, right? So, everything, like Jacob was saying, everything is based on them getting ready for tonight. The juke joint has to go down tonight. And Jacob, man, I just wanted to point out an interesting deal that I picked up, just from listening to different YouTube videos and snippets about Sinners, is that Smoke is wearing the blue hat in the movie. Mm-hmm. Stack is wearing the red hat. Now, to the naked eye, that's, and even my parents did this. This is how you tell them apart. And, there's not many times in the movies to where they don't have on the hat. Now, at points they do lose it. And then, you can definitely recognize them without the hats at a certain point. But, and what you mentioned that they robbed the mob, a backstory, or at least a theory, is that the hats mean more than just, they serve a bigger purpose than just identifying which twin is which, right? So, I read that the blue hat that Smoke is wearing is supposed to be representative of the Irish mob. The red hat that Stack is wearing is supposed to be representative of the Italian mob. So that makes sense where one has beer, the other one has the money and everything else, right? I just thought that was pretty interesting, man. And, and I'm sure they mentioned that at some point in the movie, but I definitely didn't catch it on my first couple of watches.
I don't think they mentioned the colors at all in the movie, but they do mention later on that they have Irish beer and Italian wine. Right. I think it's Annie, and we'll talk about who Annie is. She's putting it together, and she's like, "You robbed both pubs, didn't you?" Yeah. And then they even have their tie and their vests are red and blue too. So even when they lose their hats or their jackets are off, you still know who's who. Things get a little blood soaked as the night goes on, but you can still tell them apart. And so they go their separate ways. And I thought the scene. So the first thing that happens is Smoke rolls up into town, and this, from everything I'm reading, was just incredibly historically accurate. It was a segregated town. There was a white side, there was a black side of town. And we see that there's an Asian family, a Chinese family specifically, running a convenience store. And it was so funny when he talks to that little girl, and that Southern accent that came out, I was not expecting that at all. Wasn't expecting that at all. But then I read about it, and there was a number of Chinese people in that area, and they kind of served as a go-between between white and black sides, and they were kind of not really accepted, but kind of accepted in both parties. So they were able to go back and forth.
Which shows that they have a pretty good working relationship with the twin when he goes in and he's asking for, if they can provide him with certain services to get ready for the juke joint, which is fine. But just to back up a little bit, man, one of my favorite scenes in this movie was when Twin is negotiating with the young lady to watch his truck.
Okay, yeah.
Have you heard of the Smokestack twins? And she was like, yeah. And he was like, well, I'm Smoke. And then she kind of jumped back a little bit, right? Yeah. And then, no, don't, that tells you that their reputation precedes them, right? And so he goes in and he says, I want you to watch my truck. I'm gonna pay you 10 cents for every minute I'm gone. Now, this is 1930s. This is a big deal, right? So,
right.
And she's like, okay, just gonna accept the 10 cents. But Smoke was like, no, man, we're conversating. When we talk, we always have to be in conversation with each other, right? So you have to negotiate. You don't have to just take what I'm offering you because who I am. You need to negotiate. And even then, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, man, but I laugh at that scene every time I watch it, man. It's so funny.
Yeah, it's funny and it's pretty inspiring too, because the twins they're portrayed as pretty ruthless, especially Smoke. They're these men that were in. I'm guessing it's World War I because they talk about them being in the war.
Yep.
And being in the mob, and they've just seen all this stuff and been through all this stuff. But they're so much more than that. They're coming back. They're wanting to raise up their community, man. They want to show other Black people, a way of life, and not necessarily a criminal way of life, but a way of life that they can have that can be different. So, and a lot of parts of the movie were inspiring to me like that. That was really their whole goal, was to be free and have others be free with them. But that brings us to, my first optometry thing that I saw in the movie was he asked that girl to watch the truck for him and to honk the horn if anyone's messing with it. And I think within like a minute, she's honking the horn, and he comes out and there's two guys boosting his truck or robbing his truck. First thing he does is shoot a guy in the butt. Other guy runs around, he gets him to stop, and he's holding him up. And when the guy turns around, he has a, kind of a white or opacified, obviously a non-working eye in his left eye. Did you notice that?
Yeah, no, I didn't. I didn't until you told me about that when we was getting ready to do this podcast. So I did when I went back and rewatched it. I seen it, and I was like, I can't believe I missed that. But it's pretty glaring if you're paying attention. But I guess one can only speculate what the issue might have been, with that. It could have been a number of anything. I mean, we see cornea opacifications, and it can mean 10, 20 different things, So in 1930, who knows, man? I mean,
what was going on? No, and I was thinking about what it could be, and I was thinking diabetes could end up being that way if you got like a neovascular glaucoma, or if you a neurotrophic keratopathy, something like that. But when I really thought about it more is, this director, he's so good, Ryan Coogler. I think everything he does is intentional. Why did he decide to give this guy a blind eye? And I thought about it for a while, and it's something we see. You work in a community health center, don't you?
Correct.
Yeah, and I work at a similar hospital setting, and access to care even today is so difficult for people. And so people that have some of these conditions end up going blind or losing an eye where they never would if they lived in a different part of town. Correct. Or had different access to health insurance. So think about sharecroppers in 1930s Mississippi. There's no access to care. So whatever happened to him, there was no getting it fixed.
Yeah, you just have to live with it and deal with it at the same time. But no, that's a very interesting point as well, because it could have been anything. It could have been a penetrating ocular injury. Maybe it was an infection. I mean, it could have been a number of things. But yeah, you know what? We may have to do a little research because, like you said, the director is very, very intentional with that. I'm sure that wasn't by accident. That was definitely on purpose. So maybe we should look back at that and come back and maybe have a bonus credits, a podcast, and where we review these things. But but continue, my friend.
We'll get the Patreon going. Well, and what I thought about that, and this is kind of a personal anecdote, and I don't know the history of the director, but I had the chance in 2021 to speak with my 94-year-old great aunt. First time I'd ever met her. She lives in New York City, but she told me about her mother, who actually was a freed slave, and before she was freed, her owner had poured hot, scalding water on her eyes. I don't know if it was one eye or two eyes, but basically her whole life she had an eye that obviously was blind and didn't work. And I just thought, I was like, I wonder how many people were walking around like that.
Right. So now you add a traumatic component into it. All right.
Yeah.
So okay. So as a form of punishment, of course, slaves were freed at some point. The owners didn't make that very much. So maybe the thought was to debilitate them to where they are not of much use to anyone else, or outside of working for them. So no, that's a pretty interesting point.
Yeah, I just thought about it. It's like, who knows what this man's been through? We don't know anything about him except he knows smoke for somehow, and he's stealing stuff. So, but we don't learn we never see him again. I don't think he was at the party or anything, so we never see him again. Yeah. So anyway,
an interesting point, because the twins aren't just completely ruthless, right?
Right.
He shoots Terry, the guy robbing his truck, in the butt, and then he shoots his friend in the leg because he said, "I can't have someone saying that they almost robbed the twins." And Smoke, in all of his generosity, went in back with the Asian family and offered some money, paid to have them patched up or to seek medical care. So yeah, that was a very, very good sequence scene there. It was just incredible.
Yeah, no, it was great. Yeah, and then they get him the medical care, and Smoke just has all kinds of cash he's pulling out. It's crazy.
It's just everywhere. It's just everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is that's an interesting point as we get towards the end of the movie. Very interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And then so after that, he agrees with the Chinese family. They're gonna paint the sign and come. They're gonna come do some I think help. Not with security. I forget what they're gonna. I think they're just gonna come help bartend and wait and do things like that.
Yeah. They was managing the grocery store, so they were supplying the catfish. For
yeah, that's right.
And then Annie, of course, is gonna come along later. She's gonna
come and cook it.
She's gonna cook and everything. Yep.
That's right. And then we hop over to the other side of town with Stack and Sammy with Preacher Boy, and we meet good old Delta Slim, who's playing the harmonica and singing out by the train station. And this whole time we're still very immersed in 1930s Mississippi. You see all the whites only signs and all of that. But yeah, then they speak with Delta Slim. He's pretty funny. They go back and forth with him. They convince him basically to come and play the piano that night at the juke joint. And then we meet Mary for the first time. It's kind of funny. Sammy Boy's like, "Hey Stack, there's this white lady looking at you or staring at you over there." And then it ends up being what's her name? The girl that plays her. I don't know. I should know. She's famous. Haley Steinfeld. There we go. Haley Steinfeld. She comes up and she has some words for Stack that I don't think we can repeat on the podcast, but they're pretty funny. And then Sammy goes, "Hey Stack, maybe she ain't white." And then but then and then we meet Perline, who's Sammy seems to be interested in Perline too, and so it appears both of those ladies are going to be at the juke joint later that night. And then we go back to the other side of town again with Smoke, and we meet Annie. And Annie lives in kind of this cool looking backwoods home. She's got all kinds of hoodoo stuff hanging around. I was reading that one, a lot of her, I don't know if you'd call it magic or, hoodoo, but a lot of it was a callback to the Gullah Geechee culture specifically.
Okay.
So I was reading about that. And so you find out that her and Smoke were romantically involved, and apparently they lost a child, and that seems to have jaded him towards her, spiritual beliefs. But I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Because they have a back and forth about Annie's belief about prayer and keeping everyone safe, and then he replies, "Well, how come that didn't work on the life of our baby," and those kind of things. But you can also see in this scene where both Annie, for one, is sharp as a tack. She knows them through and through, especially. And I think if I'm not mistaken, if you listen closely, she calls him Smoke, but she also refers to him by his real name.
Yeah.
In that scene for the first time, which will come up again as well. So that lets me think that Smoke wasn't always Smoke. Right? Maybe there was things that happened in his life or whatever else that made him become Smoke. But I thought that was a very powerful scene. I think the love interest of both the twins played the role extremely well. Both of them was pivotal, and you can tell that as much as Stack didn't want to be around Mary, like he loves her just as much as Smoke loves
to be
him.
around.
Right?
Yeah.
So
there's
Smoke,
actually,
so Smoke ends up talking Annie into coming to make the fish, which is a great compromise, because I don't think she would go any other way. You know, why would she go do anything for him?
because she even
the power of love, I guess.
She even is like, how'd y'all get all that money to get them white folks to sell you this mill? And you could tell she's like suspicious about it, right? And the vibe from her is like, yeah, that's cute that you call yourself Smoke, but I know who you are. Like, she's like, you're home now. Is it Emmanuel? I think it's Emmanuel that.
No,
and Elijah. Yeah. I'm just pulling stuff out. And then there's some pretty cool symbolism in one of the last scenes of the movie with that too that we could talk about. Yeah. Anyway, so now that we've done this, we've got and then you go back to the side of town. Stack and Sammy, they picked up Delta Slim. Actually, my favorite scene of the movie happens right here, where it's Sammy, Delta Slim, and Stack driving down the road. And they drive by some incarcerated men, and Delta Slim yells at him. Delta is probably 60 years old. He's quite a bit older than both of the young men in the car. And Sammy's like, you know them? You know some of them? He's like, I know all of them. And then he tells this story, and it just blew me away, the music that was playing as he tells this story about his friend who was lynched unjustly. Well, none of them were justifiable, but they made up a story about him to get his money, and he gets lynched. And the music is playing, and then as the music's playing, you actually hear the sounds of the mob and the lynching happening, which is horrifying but powerful at the same time. And I remember sitting there in the theater like, whoa, what is this movie? Because I really didn't know what the movie was going to be before I went and saw it. And it was pulling on these.
I didn't watch any of the trailers for it.
Yeah, I mean, the trailers didn't give much, that it just looked scary. And so that happens. And then, it's just real heavy right after that happens. And then Delta Slim just starts singing. And, Michael B. Jordan's character looks back at Sammy and says, well, you got that guitar, don't you? And he starts playing, and he's playing the guitar while Delta Slim sings. Mm-hmm. So that whole part, the singing, that was all improvised. That wasn't in the script. I read about later.
Really?
So Delta Slim just decided to start singing the character. What's the actor's name? Oh, and I love him too.
He's been around a long time. He has left a large footprint in the movie industry. He's great, man. He's fantastic. I can't recall his name right now either, but he's fantastic.
I'm gonna look it up because we owe that man to say his name. Yeah, Delroy Lindo.
Yes.
Just incredible. And he just said he felt it, and he started singing that old Southern hymn, whatever that was that came out. And then, they just went with it and played. Michael B. Jordan told them to start playing the guitar, and they went with it. So I just thought it was incredible. But yeah, that speaks volumes again to the music. Music is actually what I would say the most important theme in this whole movie, or at least the power of music and culture. And yeah, so that happens. They pick up Cornbread, who's another one of my favorite characters. He's just a big old dude. He's been in a lot of things, but the thing I remember him most from is he was in 8 Mile when I was a kid. He's one of B-Rabbit's friends. Yeah. So they pick up Cornbread, convince him, and Stack convinces him in quite a vulgar way to come help them have security at the juke joint.
But did you notice that the Stack twins don't have any problems with anybody because no one has any problems with them? But when he says what he says to Cornbread in front of his wife, which is totally disrespectful.
Yeah.
Cornbread said, "Oh, now I got the kick your butt or whatever else," and Stack like, "Hey, I don't want any problems." I thought that was extremely funny. Yeah, for sure.
He's like, "Hey, I don't want." And then his wife goes, "Well, how much money are we talking?" And he's like, "Oh, that's a good woman."
Right, man. Yeah, man. The testament of a good movie is when you look back at it and I can't see anyone else playing that character or any other character.
Oh yeah,
right. So yeah, like cornbread is cornbread. The Smokestack Twins are Michael B. Jordan, right? Like the casting was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was great. So much fun, just all the way around. You're having fun. You kind of forget this is a horror movie at this point. And then everyone's driving happily. There's music playing. They're driving to the juke joint. And then the score totally changes. I think this is when like the heavy metal score kind of starts to come in. And you see this house kind of just sitting, this old kind of decrepit house sitting in a field, and you see this dude just running up. He jumps out of the sky, apparently, running up to the house, and he's just burning. And you're like, okay, so this must be the vampire because the sun's burning him. He knocks on the door. He convinces this couple to let them in and to let him in. So they let him in. They hide him. But he says the Native Americans are chasing him. And so they hide him in. And then the Choctaw Native Americans show up. And I thought that was the coolest depiction of Native Americans I've seen in a movie in a long time. They show up and they're
no doubt. So, right.
Yeah.
So at this point, the opening score features the Indians, and then we really meet them at this point. So they're hunting Remick. That's the vampire's name. And that was a very interesting scene because the sun is setting. So that led me to believe that the threat that he faced from the Choctaw Indians was greater than the threat he was facing from the sun. Right? Because vampires can't beat out in the sun. Like we've all heard all the stories and folklore.
Yeah.
And blah, blah, blah. So so I thought that was very, very powerful. And Remick is Remick, very charming, very manipulative.
Yeah. I would say he's not.
I noticed that the Indians, Choctaw was like, we need to. If he's in there, we need to move quick. And then they pan out and they show that the sun is setting. They know once the sun goes down, Remick is in full strength. He's in full power mode. We can't beat him like this. We are at a disadvantage like this. They offer no resistance. Oh, okay. He's not in there. Or maybe he is. It's time for us to go. Regardless, it's time for us to go. Right? I thought that was very cool.
I thought it was. It was just like, hey, we're going to mind our business then. They're like, hey, God help you if you let him in there, but there's nothing we can do now.
You can deal with it now. It's up to you. However it plays, it's up to you, right? So, yeah, I thought that was extremely cool.
Yeah, that was. And they take off in their horses and cars. They have a car and horses, and they look regal and it was cool. And then we never see them again.
Nope.
We see them for maybe 30 seconds, and that was it. So they leave, and then, of course, the couple that let him in. Oh, and another important part, you see that couple has a clan hood in the background, and the leader of the Choctaws, he sees that too.
Right.
And you have to think that's maybe part of why he's okay. Right. Do what you want to do too.
Which also will come back into play later on. Like the director is introducing you to everything in order for it to come back around in order, and it's fascinating, man. Fascinating.
It is, yeah. It's masterful, really. That's all I could say. But then so then the wife is the one that closes the door, and then she's like, honey, and she goes back and sees Remick sitting in a chair, all creepily, blood all over his face. Husband's dead on the floor, but the husband gets up and is turned into a vampire, and so. And that's what happens. And then there's I thought this part, whenever the vampires come up or there's something big that happens, there's a big, like, heavy metal electric guitar like solo in the background. That's part of the score. And so then, and it's kind of like this chilling, like, oh, things are about to get real. The music starts. Then we go back to the juke joint and the party's starting. Everyone's having a good time.
But wait a second. Because at this point, He does what he needs to do to the husband. The wife screams, and then this is when we see Remick with the red eyes, right?
Yeah.
Right. So this is the optometry element of it. Now,
there you go. Yeah.
In the optometry world and in the ophthalmology world, a red reflex is a good thing. But in Ryan Coogler's movie, The Sinners, it's a horrible thing. So for anybody listening out there who have young children or babies, newborns, and they take their kids to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician flashes in the light, they're checking for the red reflex. They're checking for specific eye conditions, more, with the most serious being retinoblastoma, which is a cancer of the eye, right? So technically, if you shine a light into both pupils, you should get an equal red reflex between both eyes, right? But in this case, red means terrible. Red means vampire. It means, which from what we know, even not in just this movie, Jacob, at all, red pupils, red eyes, red reflex is a terrible thing. And they give it to all the monsters, the aliens, whatever else in the movies. And it's just something that started a long time ago and it just continues to go on.
Yeah, it's just kept going. And, that bringing up retinoblastoma is such a good point. To all the parents out there, as you take pictures of your kids, things like that, you go back and look at them. If you ever notice that one of their pupils is red, when you get the red eye effect in a picture, one's red and one's white, that take them to get checked. It could be nothing, but you also quite literally might save a life. Retinoblastoma is a serious condition, and that's how they find it. And what happens is that tumor in the eye, it actually blocks the pupil, so there's not a red reflex from the retina.
Right, and a lot of times there may be some other signs as well that maybe no one's picked up on. Maybe there's an eye turn or something in relation to that, because if there's something black blocking the retina, then is not getting the stimulation that it needs, then it's not going to maintain any kind of fixation. Now, it's a little tricky. It's a little tricky in babies because the eye muscles are still kind of forming and everything else. So you may get a baby that's cross-eyed, looking at the bottle or whatever else, right? So, it's just kind of all over the place. And with, my brother and his wife has a 2-month-old, and they actually asked me about the red reflex the other day. So I went over there. Yeah, I went over there. I took my equipment and took some lenses and took a good look, and everything was all good. And they paid me in pizza, man. But, I think from a pediatrician standpoint, when they recognize these things and they make the appropriate referrals, man, it's like you said, it may very well save a life, for sure.
Oh, for sure. And it has here, even at our hospital, I think in the last couple of years, we had a retinoblastoma that got caught.
Yeah. Luckily, it's a very rare condition, right? And I'm happy to say that I haven't seen one in my time as a practicing optometrist, and I hope to never see one as my time as a practicing optometrist. But I know there's special, subspecialties, or pediatric optometrists, ophthalmologists that may encounter these things a little bit more frequently than I do. But early detection is key, man, right? So we want to detect these things, start management, institute a plan as soon as possible for the best possible outcomes, right?
Exactly, yeah. And hey, we are, collaborative care is so important. Just a couple months ago, one of the pediatricians at our hospital called over to the eye clinic and said, hey, I could not get a reflex on this kiddo. I'm not sure if I'm just not doing a good job. And I said, well, let me just come over. And she was doing a good job, but she's like, I don't want to refer her and do all this, if we don't have to. I was like, yeah, let me come over. And I walked over to the clinic. It was just across the hallway, and took a look, and it was just a baby that it was really difficult to get her to fix.
Oh yeah, of course.
But yeah, so I mean, it goes back to pediatricians and ophthalmologists and optometrists, that we're always going to be available to help if we can, especially in hospital care settings like that where we're all together. I imagine you see all ages. Do you see everybody where you work?
I do. Just recently, I guess within the last couple of years or so, I don't see anyone under the age of 6 anymore. It's just kind of hard to do an examination on that. But if you're 6 and older, then I'll see you. Yeah, I definitely see you. We have a good network with Texas Children's Hospital.
Oh, cool.
They're doing a fantastic job with seeing the kiddos.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, so that's one of the optometry things that stood out for us for sure, just those red eyes. But a red reflex really isn't a scary thing. I mean, it'd be scary if you saw it floating in your room.
Not in the real world.
Not in the real world, yeah. If you woke up and just saw some red eyes, that'd be kind of scary. But But yeah, and it also, they tried to give it like a an animalistic feel to it, because animals have glowing eyes. They have an extra layer on their retina, but usually that's a yellowish or whitish color than red. But I think that's part of what movies go for too. But yeah, so now we get to the juke joint. We got Cornbread sitting on a stool out front, making sure no one comes in that shouldn't be coming in. Mm-hmm. We got everyone dancing, singing. We got Perlene shows up, and then Mary shows up, and it's a big deal that Mary's there, and they're trying to get her to leave and stuff. And she's like, "No, I'm not leaving. I belong here." And that's where we find out that I think one of Mary's grandfathers was part black, but Stack didn't want her to get hurt, so he made her like marry a white man and all this stuff, and she feels betrayed by it. And so there's all this emotional.
Yeah, and Mary's really upset about one. She's upset at Stack for sure, right? Because she wants to be with Stack, and she doesn't make any qualms about that, right? But she's also upset because she's in town because she just buried her mother. So she's at the juke joint, and she's like, "You guys have all this money to buy a juke joint, but you didn't send." On top of not coming to the funeral, you didn't send my mother any flowers for her service. And this is when Smoke walks in and said, and I love this line. She said, "We sent your mom flowers, plenty of them, while she was alive to smell it." Mm-hmm. It's incredible quote, man. And it just means so much, because you just go back and say, why do we give people the flowers when they're dead? Let's let them know that they're appreciated while they're alive and with us. Mm-hmm. And then there's there's very little guilt associated with that. We celebrated you while you was here. Of course, we'll celebrate your memory at the service, but let's make sure you're appreciated while you're here. I thought that was a very powerful line.
For sure, yeah. Pick up that phone, call people, text them. I mean, yeah. So much wisdom comes out of the Smokestack twins throughout the whole movie. It's great. There's these brutal, ruthless killers, all this, but then there are these, emotionally mature men that, it's great. Right. They're great role models, maybe except for the mob stuff, but I don't know. They robbed the mob, so I don't know.
Mob stuff aside, gangster stuff aside, they're great people.
just exemplary, man. So yeah, then the night goes on. I want to make sure I don't miss anything too important, but really everyone's just having a great time. Mm-hmm. Seems to be pretty happy, And then the vampires, they show up at the door. The three white people. And they just look like normal people. They have these funny accents they play this like goofy song that's actually kind of catchy. And they're like, "We want to come in and play some music." And Smoke's like, "Nah, there's nothing for you here." And the funniest part was like, Smoke looks at Remick and says, "Y'all clan?" He like asks them if they're part of the clan, and Remick is so taken aback. He's like, "Sir, no." He's like, "Absolutely not." So it's like, I'll murder people and eat and take their souls and stuff. I am not part of the clan. Don't worry. I just thought
which will come up again later on in the movie. Like,
it's like, absolutely, I'm an evil vampire, but I'm not.
I'm glad you brought that up. We're all about occlusion here, right?
Yeah, that's what he says. Equality.
It's extremely funny, man.
which ends up being more true than you think. the whole equality and inclusion thing. For sure. Like, man,
and even as we go through it, Jacob, like you're bringing out so many different things that that's what was going on right at this scene and everything else. But you're right. They want to come in the juke joint. Twins were like, "Heck no, go back." Uh-huh. Go back down to Arkansas, where you from, or
wherever you're from,
they're from, right? He's like, because even if it's 1930s, things are still pretty tense racially, right? Back to Delta Slim's story, like one person can say the wrong thing and it may cost one or multiple people their lives, right? So any other time maybe we'll party with you, not tonight though, not in 1932, right? So maybe it's best that you guys leave.
And Smoke says that that's his concern, because someone, I don't remember who, but someone was like, why can't they come in? They got money. And he's like, all it takes is for one man in here, one black man, to look at that white lady the wrong way. Stories get out, you know, and we're done. And we're done. And that is unfortunately the story of so many black men in history in this country. So, you know, and so it's Ryan Coogler is kind of, he's telling us a story, a true story and a fictional story at the same time. That was great. So, but the night keeps going, you know, and I didn't know about this to the movie, but a lot of the men that are working the fields, a lot of the men and women, the sharecroppers that are working the fields, they are getting money that's only good at like plantation stores and things like that. So it's not real U.S. currency. And Stack is like, yeah, we'll take that. But Smoke is like, no, we can't take that. We're going to go
We
bankrupt.
need U.S. dollars. That's what he said.
Yep.
U.S. dollars.
Yeah, I think he says U.S. mother effing dollars. Isn't that what he said? Maybe I'm ad-libbing, but I feel like that's what he said. I got to watch it again.
That's exactly what he said.
Okay. Yeah. But that becomes important because as the night goes on, Smoke pulls Stack into the room. Him and Annie, the two of them and Annie are saying, "Hey, we're going to run out of cash here after just a few weekends of doing this. We're upside down, pretty much already.
We got too much. That's what it's. Yep.
Exactly. And so at that point, you know what? I realized that the whole reason the vampires came, I was thinking it happened after, but that musical scene where they call the ancestors and do all of that has already happened at this point. And I think we should talk about that. So basically that beginning animation where it talks about there's certain people that could sing so well, they call ancestors, they call, people from the future, and they call evil things. Basically, that happens when Sammy sings the blues for the first time.
Correct. Which comes up again. And Remick said he will go on to say, "I came here for you, Sammy, you specifically." Because even initially, when he goes up to the door and he's trying to get in, he was like, "Oh, that must have been the voice I heard from when I was walking up." And that's when Sammy was singing his tune with Delta Slim. So yeah, and actually. I'm glad you brought that up because that's a very powerful scene because that goes back. Now, director is starting to tie up the loose. I don't want to call them loose ends, but he's starting to tie up things that he presented to us in the beginning of the movie, which is fantastic.
It was, yeah. And that scene, it was so fun and inspiring. And it's all pretty much, I think it's 2 or 3 scenes stitched together, but it appears like one continuous scene where they're just looking around and you see like ancient Africans coming out, and then you see like ancient Chinese people coming out because Bo and Grace are there, and then you see people from the future coming in. You see, you see like modern hip hop and things like that. And it's just honestly, that scene had the potential to completely go off the rails and not land. I think that could have been kind of a strange scene, but somehow they delivered on it perfectly, and and the vampires show up right after that, and it's incredible. That if you only saw that scene from the movie, it'd be worth it, honestly. Seeing that scene.
Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect fusion of past, present, and future. How one, let's say if the cornerstone is the blues, and then even Delta Slim makes this point. At some point, he like the blues and music wasn't forced upon us like religion was. This is more natural. This is the coming together of people and cultures and celebrating. And you can see how that transcends throughout different cultures and everything else. Because music is music, right? Like how many times have you listened to a song you didn't understand anything they were saying, and you love the song? Like this is what's going on in this scene, and you're absolutely right. This scene could have went just nuts, but it landed. It was a grand slam out the park.
Yeah, they do the whole the buildings, burning up, and it's all surreal, and it's like magical realism kind of happening all at once, and then the vampires show up. So as that happens, I wanted to make sure we go back to there because that's what actually called Remick. It appears to come to this juke joint. He hears his voice. So he comes, they come, they send him away, and then they find out they're kind of in the hole financially. And Mary's like, hey, Stack, let me go talk to them. You know, they'll talk to me before they'll talk to you. They got money. You need money. And, you know, so she goes and she talks to the vampires. He gives her permission to go do that. She goes out there, you know, talks to the vampires. It's kind of weird. She tells them their mother died, her mom died, and you know, then they just get kind of weird. They're like, "Oh, we could help you. We could," and it's getting very like culty, missionary, like, you know. And she's like, "I'm gonna go back inside. You guys have a good night." And she starts walking away, and then you see Remick just float up, float up behind her, and then you know it's insinuated that he bites her and turns her into a vampire. And then she comes back in, acting all normal, you know, starts dancing with Smoke or Stack. Sorry, starts dancing with Stack, ends up seducing Stack, and yeah, so they go back into a back room.
But just to back up, Mary comes back. She encounters Cornbread at the front, and you notice.
Oh yeah, yep.
Pauses, right? Yeah, she pauses in, and this is when you realize that. And even it happened with Remick and the two other people that he was with. They can't come in unless they are invited.
Right.
So Cornbread said, "Oh yeah, come on back in, Mary." Not thinking,
what you doing, Mary? Yeah, he was like,
Cornbread's like, "Why are you even asking me if you can come back in? Like, come on, you were just in here. Why are you asking me to do anything?" Right. So Cornbread's just being a nice guy at this point, not thinking anything of it.
Right. Yeah. And then at that point, Cornbread goes off to go to the bathroom. So he goes off to go to the bathroom, which there's a deleted scene that I just saw that Universal released. That's pretty funny of when he's out there. But yeah, so he goes out to go to the bathroom, puts Delta Slim in front of the door. Mary pulls Stack into a room, kind of a back room, and they're, doing their thing. And then it's a pretty funny scene actually, because Smoke asks Sammy to go check on Stack. Sammy goes, opens the door, sees that Mary and Stack are doing their thing, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not getting involved in that." And then Smoke is like, "I don't care what they're doing. I told you to get my brother." And so he goes in, he walks in. When they walk back in, they're not making love. Mary is like eating Stack or biting his neck at least.
Yep.
Right. And so, and it goes 0 to 100 real quick, biting his neck. And Stack pulls out 2 guns, just blows her away. She gets right back up, and she's like terrifying, blood all over her face, eyes have turned that red color, and says, "We're gonna kill every last one of you."
Yep.
And then she just runs out. Which, yeah, I don't really know why she ran out, because she was already in, but I guess it was just to go meet up with the other vampires. But she runs out, leaves.
Yeah. And even then, like, even when she's running out, she runs past Delta Slim. And if you listen carefully, she'll say, and she's like, "I'll be back." Like it's real faded and muffled.
Yeah.
Like, or did she say, like, "We'll be back" or something? Like, it was like, you have to be listening to it at the point, but it was extremely, I shouldn't have laughed, Jacob, but I did. But he's like, "I'll be back." It sounds like something the kid would say. Like, "Yeah, I'll be back."
Yeah, that's what it was like. So she runs out. Delta Slim is so funny in this movie.
He is.
Because now I'm just remembering where Sammy's looking for Stack. He's like, "Oh yeah, they're in there," and he looks in and sees that they're doing their thing. And Delta's like, "Oh, they busy, huh?"
And that this, and we didn't make mentions of it in the beginning, but lack of a better phrase, Delta Slim is a functioning alcoholic, man. At best.
Yeah. And his liver has to just be toast.
No, just gone. But he's a functioning alcoholic, and obviously we can't go over all of the gems in the movie, but go back and watch it. I mean, it's even it's a bargaining chip to get Delta Slim to even come play at the juke joint with, he offers alcohol and that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah,
all the drink,
real
all
Irish
the drink.
Mm-hmm.
but right. So at this point, they walk in, and Mary leaves, and she's threatening to come back, or she's promising to come back. One of the two. So what do we pick up from there?
So yeah, so that happens. Stack is just all torn up. or Smoke is. I'm sorry, Smoke is all torn up about his brother. He's holding him, covered in blood, super sad. And then Annie starts putting it together, and she's like, "You shot her," and she just got up like nothing happened. He was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Smoke, we got to get his body outside." He's like, "You're not moving my brother." And she's like, "Okay, well, we at least got to lock him in here." Right. So you can tell Annie, she knows something about, afterlife, things happen and things like that. She knows something's not right. So they close that door, leave Stack in there. And at that moment, Cornbread comes walking up, just out of the last time we saw Cornbread, he was getting ready to go pee, and it looked like there was some eyes kind of peeping at him. And then Cornbread just comes walking up like nothing happened. Everyone's so sad because Stack just died. They've ended the party. They told everyone to leave. And Cornbread comes walking up, and they're like, "Hey guys, what you doing?" He's basically like nothing happened. And they're like, "Where have you been?" And he's like, "Well, I had to see a man about a horse." That's what he said, or something about that. Something about going to the restroom. And he's like, "Oh man, Stack's dead." He's like, "Well, let me in now so I can come in and help." And Smoke's about to let him in, about to let Cornbread in, and Annie's like, "Hold up. Yeah. Why can't you just walk your big self in here? Why do you need permission to come in here? You've been in and out of here all day." And this is it's an important scene, but it's one of the funniest scenes in the whole movie. Oh, yeah. Cornbread just delivers it perfectly. He's like, they're going back and forth about why he can't come in. And he's like, "We're out here arguing, talking about this, when we should be doing what we're supposed to be, when we should be focused on what we're supposed to be doing," or something like that. And Delta Slim's in the background. He's like, "And what is it we're supposed to be doing?"
Right.
You're kind of one another. And you're just like, what is going on? And Cornbread's just trying to convince him to let him in. And they're like, why can't you just walk in here? And he won't do it. And Annie's like, "Admit it. You're dead, ain't you? You're dead. One of those white people killed you out there, and you became a haint." That's the word they're using, is haint. Yep. That's that word they're using at first, which I looked up later, and it's basically kind of a mispronunciation of the word haunt. And from what I can understand, it's kind of an old Southern tale of a zombie-like creature. Okay. Not really a zombie, but something dead has taken over someone's body, basically. Right. And so that's what Annie is thinking this is, blah, blah, blah. And then, Cornbread's like, "All right, well, if you're not going to let me in, at least give me my money for, pay me for being the security guard." And for the life of me, I don't know why. I guess Smoke is just an honorable man. He goes to pay him his money, reaches his hand to him. As soon as he gives his hand to Cornbread pulls him in, mouth opens up, big old teeth. This is totally a vampire. And
right. Which was planned from on Cornbread's behalf, because if you're looking at the movie, at that scene, he doesn't extend his hand for the money. He just like
kind of down by his side here,
his chest, right? And he just barely extends it enough so that Twin would have to extend to give him the money, right? And I just noticed that because Cornbread's a big guy, like in real life, that guy's got to be like what 6'3", 6'4", or something like. He's a big solid guy. Like if he his wingspan, he can reach out there and get his money. But again, he just almost like a kid, a child, like he just. which is extremely funny, but to your point, it was a setup he was trying to get Twin to commit so he can bite him, but obviously Twin had his wits about him and was able to elude that.
He pulls away, shoots him, and then Cornbread gets right back up. And the special effects were amazing in this movie, I thought, and you could tell they were all what do they call that when they don't use CGI? They're all practical effects. And so his whole face is just kind of blown open from the gunshot, but he just smiles. Cornbread gets up and smiles, and then all the other vampires start walking up, right? And then things really go.
But we should also make the point now that after Stack, and I'm saying that right? No, after Stack is bitten by Mary, Delta Slim clears out the juke joint.
Yes, they tell everyone to go home.
Everyone leaves. There's no one left but the core characters here. Everyone leaves. Yep. So imagine now By the time that Cornbread is trying to come back, he attacks Twin. That the guests from the party have been out long enough to where they have been attacked by Remy and everyone else who's just turned, and now they have turned.
Exactly. And then when does this happen? And then, Stack comes to life and runs out, basically. Right. When does that happen? I guess right after this, right? They start hearing a knocking on the door. Yeah. Before we get into that, another important part is that Grace and Bo, the Chinese couple, they were both part of that core group that stayed behind. But then Grace is very scared. So Bo says, all right, honey, let me go get the car. And then that's the last time he leaves. And that's important later. Right. But then, then after the whole cornbread thing happens, they close the door. They're scared. Delta Slim says that he pooped his pants. Makes a little joke about that, I think. And then they hear a knocking from the room that Stack was locked in. And so then, they find out that Stack's in there. He's alive. But then you see Stack, and he's all bitten up and bloody. And Annie's like, that's not your brother no more. That's not your brother no more. And as he busts through the door, they throw, and Annie, who has figured this all out already, throws some garlic water on him. She puts 2 and 2 together somewhere, throws some garlic water on him, which that hurts him, obviously. And so Stack opens the door and runs out to go be with the rest of the vampires. And that's at this point where Annie says, we're not dealing with hates. We're not dealing with those, those zombie haunt characters we were talking about. We're dealing with vampires. And this is the part of the movie where I thought, and I've seen some complaints about this, that it just, because it ends pretty quickly after this, actually. It goes really fast. She figures out the vampires. It's kind of like an old trope, like there's someone that knows, like, oh, vampires, you got to kill them with garlic and wooden stakes. And there's no explaining why she knows that. She just knows that. They get it together, and they prepare to kind of like, fight the vampires for the night and everything.
Yeah, and also an interesting point, because we've seen this in plenty of vampire movies before, because someone brings up the point, well, can we just kill the leader, Remick? And that will kill the rest of the vampires. And Annie was like, of course not. We have to kill each one of them individually in order to free the soul, or how that plays out. I thought that was interesting, because they did pay pretty close attention to detail, but they don't stand a chance, Jacob, or at least the way that it's set up, because they're vastly outnumbered. They're chewing on garlic, they're making wooden stakes and everything else. But their only saving grace is that the only way the vampires can come in is if they're invited in. That's the only thing that saves them. Like maybe that's my gripe with the movie, but of course we wouldn't have a movie if they just waited things out until daylight.
Well, and I have thoughts on why Ryan Coogler decided to do it this way. Because, I didn't think there was anything too groundbreaking with the vampires, with their design, or it was all things we've seen in other vampire movies, I thought. Right. So there was nothing too new about these vampires, but I thought that was by design. I thought that was on purpose, and I'll say why a little later. But I like that you just used the word, their saving grace was not being able to let them in, because Grace, did you do that on purpose? Because Grace ends up being the one that messes it up for everybody. Or depending on how you look at it, maybe saved everybody. I don't know. But basically, Remick threatens her when the vampires come walking up. Remick threatens her that, hey, we're going to go into town. And we're going to find your daughter, Right. And so she's like, no, we got to let him in, and they're going to go kill everyone in the town. So, and I'll get to that, what she does in a second, but then one of the coolest scenes of the movie, I said that like 10 times now. There's so many amazing scenes in this movie. Right. But this is where we find out that Remick is Irish. They're doing an old Irish jig. You see Cornbread with his face blown off, and Mary's all bloody, and Stack's all bloody, and they're all dancing, singing this song, Rocky Road to Dublin. It's a great song if you don't have it on your Spotify already, but they're all dancing, just doing this really creepy, bloody vampire dance. Yeah. And basically Remick's in the middle, kind of like, singing up to the sky. And they're just doing that kind of partying while everyone else, all the humans, are inside huddled up scared, and they're just out there vibing, just dancing, So basically Grace says, they go back and forth, and everyone eats garlic to make sure no one's a vampire, all this stuff. They go back and forth for a while. And Grace says, you know what? Like, she basically says, I'm letting him in. I'm not going to let him go get my daughter.
Yeah.
And she yells, she bites Smoke's hand. And so he gets away from her and she yells, come on in, mother effers. And, and the vampires come in. And like you said, they didn't stand a chance.
No.
They came in. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say an epic sequence of events, fight scene. But, you know, as they're, you know, in the beginning, they're doing a decent job, but they're just outnumbered, you know. And I think, you know, we get to the point to where, and we kind of glazed over the fact that Grace had Bo on the outside. I'm trying to keep the twins together. Let's see. Smoke had Stack on the outside, and at different points, they're pleading with the brother and the wife to come over to this side.
Yeah.
Right. So then we get back to the deal, and Ash actually pointed this out to me just a little bit ago that Stack, and I'm trying to keep it straight. Stack.
Oh yeah.
Stack is the one that bites Annie. And Ash was like, so this at this point now, Smoke has to choose between his brother and the love of his life. Right. Because now he said, now that Annie's changing, you don't have any choice. If you want to be with her, you need to come over to this side, this vampire side with us, and you can live with her in eternal bliss forever, right? But there's a scene in there when Annie said, if this happens to me, don't let me turn. And this was one of the most heartbreaking scenes of the movie right here. Because it's betrayal, but it's not betrayal. Like, like they're trying to force his hand, but you know, the underlying theme of it is that this is a love story, and he did what he should have done for his love interest. Because Ash was like, well, what would you have done? I like, well, what would your brother have done? I like, well, I hope my brother would choose his family. Like that's what I would do. But Stack, when he's standing on the outside and Smoke standing on the inside a little earlier, and he's trying to convince him. And we missed this point too, but he's like, the one of these white men, he's the nephew of that man that sold us the Duke joint, and he's actually like the Grand Wizard. He's like, they were going to come in and kill us anyways. We were never going to be free. This way we can be free. Come join us. And, Smoke's thinking about it. And I remember watching that in the movie, and I'm like, they might have got me. They might have convinced me to come be a vampire, honestly. Yeah. That's a great point. So to rewind, when Remick runs up to the cottage and he encounters the couple and he sees the hood, this is the connection that the director is making now. So they come back, he turned and said, this guy, the husband of the wife that he turned at the cottage, this guy is the nephew of the Grand Wizard, which is the guy who sold the twins the sawmill, which ends up being a killing mill. This is where they would take slaves to kill them. Hence why they noticed the blood on the floor and everything else. This was by design. No matter, exactly. This was by design. No matter what we have your money. We sold you this place, but we was always coming back to kill you. And Remick is telling me, Remick is saying, on this side, we will start. I don't want to say a new version of the Klan, but this is going to be a loving, more diverse, diversive, more inclusive type of Klan, right? So he like, and I'm saying, Remick is extremely charming throughout the entire movie. Like, that guy did a fantastic job. So he did. Yeah, like he's like, hey, it's better over here. Come over here, right? And like I said, like we get all these nuggets in the beginning, then he's starting, the director's starting to tie everything up by the end of the movie. Fantastic, man.
It is, and then you realize, like, they don't really have any options here. Living in 1930s Mississippi, they really had no options, and being a vampire might have been a better option. But Annie made him promise that if she got bit, he would drive a wooden stake through her heart, and he did that. When she got bit, when Stack bit Annie, Smoke killed her. And did you notice how upset Mary was when that happened?
Mary and Stack, very upset. Very upset by that because they knew that by him doing that, then it was over. There's nothing. He's not coming now. He's not coming.
Yeah.
He's the ops. He's the ops now.
Yeah. Well, and they lose their chance to live forever together because that's where Stack and Mary at. Like, hey, we're vampires. We're going to live together forever. Now we want our friends to come do that with us. And Smoke ended that for them. So that happens. And then, there's just a ton of violence. I don't know if you noticed this, another little qualm I had was, did you feel like there was suddenly a ton more people than there was before? Like, they made it seem like there was only 8 or 9 humans still left alive. But then I feel like we saw a whole bunch more people during this fight scene with the vampires.
Or maybe that was just the camera work or something. But it seemed like, and I guess that's my problem with fight scenes. Like, it's hard for me to keep up with who's who. Right?
Yeah.
But that's why sports works for me because there's a team that's wearing a certain color jersey and the other team wearing another certain jersey. So maybe that's what they needed in here for slow folks, man. But no, it seemed like it was a lot more people alive.
Yeah.
It seemed like there's no way that fight should have lasted that long, in my opinion.
Well, because they showed everyone dying, right? But they showed people dying who were not. We saw all the main characters, how they either died or lived. And then they showed other death scenes. And you're like, wait, who was that? And maybe there were some deleted scenes or something.
Right. Well, possibly. Or maybe some of the folks that were dying were, in fact, vampires. Maybe that was, we got. They got the best of them that way. Because they put up a pretty decent resistance.
They do. It lasted quite a while. Yeah, I was expected. I don't know if they were just playing with them, but yeah, it lasted quite a while. But yeah, Delta Slim goes out a pretty cool way. He just cuts open his arm, and it was pretty unnecessary. I don't know, but it was funny. He just lets blood stream everywhere, lets the vampires eat him. And then the fight keeps going. Pretty much everyone ends up dying. Perlene dies. And then it comes down to it. They all run upstairs, and basically Remick and then Stack corner them upstairs. Remick kills Perlene, I believe, at that point, and then Remick is trying to catch Sammy. Sammy jumps out the window and is running away from him. And then Smoke and Stack are having a battle, basically, and it appears Smoke gets the better of Stack at that point. So then we're out in the water, and I know we're running pretty long here, but they're out in the water. Basically, there's a lake right by the house, and they're out in the water. Remick catches Sammy and is about to kill him and eat him. And I thought this was another very powerful, important moment. Sammy starts saying the Lord's Prayer, or the Our Father prayer, and as he's quoting that up to the sky, Remick starts quoting it with him. And this is one of the only times where Remick's Irish accent comes out. And he quotes the entire prayer with Sammy. And then he says, I remember the men who stole my land. I hated them. And they also forced those words upon me. But even so, these words still give me comfort sometimes, basically. And that's the point where this is where I go back to that beginning scene where Sammy's father is standing there.
Right.
And that beginning scene, you see those flashbacks of the vampire. Every motion that Sammy's father makes, that's the same exact motion that Remick is making in the flashback.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't even catch that. Incredible.
Yeah, so if Sammy's father says, like, give glory to God or whatever he says, they show a scene of Remick putting out his hand or, something like that. And so what I took from that, and it wasn't necessarily that religion was bad or anything like that, but it was that, hey, the vampires are coming and they're trying to steal something from you, but this religion is also getting pushed on you, and that's not what you're in just as much of chains with this as you are with the vampires, because Sammy wasn't being allowed to do what he felt called to do in life with his father. He felt he was just doing whatever was given to him by his oppressors. But that's kind of what I took there, and I think that's what he was going for. I think that's what the director was going for, because it's if you go back and watch it, it's the exact same hand motions, everything. Remick and his father, they're like they're like a mirror of each other.
Right.
But basically, this whole conversation and moment they're having where they're connecting, I thought it was very intentional that the vampire was Irish, because I thought it was more because he's not just white, he's Irish. And so Irish, they didn't go through the same level of discrimination, but they went through a very similar, there was a lot of signs that would say NINO, like no Irish need apply, or NIN, sorry, no Irish need apply. Yep. They were very discriminated against. They were conquered, by, I'm going to butcher my history here, but by England, basically, and Christianity was forced upon them. Their culture, their history, all of that was stolen from them. And so I think there's a lot of connection there between them and these Black people living in the South. And they kind of have this moment where they're connecting. And, and in that moment, Smoke takes an opportunity to come up and kill Remick.
Right.
Stabs him through the heart with the stake. And then the sun comes up and burns all the vampires up, and Remick dies also. So yeah, basically that's how all the vampires die. And what did I miss anything there, you think?
Nope. All the vampires who were outside died.
All the vampires, that's a good point. All the vampires who were outside died. That is a good point. So yeah, but and just as before we wrap up, let's come to some of the important last scenes. I thought Ryan Coogler did this so well. He brought together so many cultures and shared struggle, different forms of the same struggle. He brought it together, and they were all going to be able to overcome this, through being vampires. And it was like showing what people maybe are willing to do when they're oppressed and things like that. So right. I thought that was great. I thought it was beautiful. And then, this ending scene, or not ending scene, because there's an end credit scene too, but basically Smoke tells Sammy to get going. Smoke and Sammy are the only people that have survived the night. He tells Sammy to get going. He has some business to handle. And he stays behind, and he basically has a whole artillery, and he gets it set up, and he knows that the clan is coming. The clan was always going to come and kill him in the morning. Right. And he's waiting for him. And basically it's like a Rambo style, just slaughter of the Ku Klux Klan by Smoke in the morning. And it's a pretty awesome scene, and he does end up getting shot, and he's sitting there, and he sees Annie comes to him holding the baby, and it's either a vision or it's him actually seeing the afterlife.
Right.
And one of the things, I don't know if you noticed this, but Annie says, put that cigarette out and you can hold the baby. I don't want you getting any of that smoke on him.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And, yes. Mm-hmm. And she also
calls him Elijah.
Exactly. Yeah. Calls him Elijah at that point. But to go back to this scene, because the head Klansman, the Grand Wizard, is still alive, and he offers money.
Mm-hmm.
The money keeps coming up. Like the money is important. Money makes the world go around. And, at this point, he just kills the guy and puts the cigarette out, and he accepts his fate. He wants to go be with the love of his life and his child, which is a very powerful scene within itself, with the choice he made to kill, well, I don't want to say kill, to keep Annie from turning. This wasn't a surprise. Now, how we got there was pretty surprising because he killed a bunch of white people. but this ending wasn't a surprise. And actually, if there ever is a happy ending in a vampire movie, I guess this is it.
Well, and I was thinking about it. It was probably the happiest ending Smoke was going to get either way.
Yeah, true.
Because if the vampires hadn't come and tipped them off, they would have just gotten killed by the clan. And it all works out. And I have to say, he didn't just kill that last guy; he emptied like a whole clip into him.
Oh yeah,
and it was just
he Swiss cheesed them up pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty great. But yeah, I think it came back to being what the whole movie was about. Connecting with your ancestors. And that's what he does. He goes to be, with his loved ones, and whatever version of the afterlife that is, and it's his version. It's not one that was pushed upon him, right? So I thought that was beautiful and great. And so that's pretty much the end of the movie, except there's an end credit scene. Do you want to tell us about the end credit scene?
Yeah, we fast forward. It's 60 years later. We presume, we don't presume. It's Sammy. He's playing the blues in some, I don't want to say it's a dive bar, or nightclub, something like it. He's enjoying himself. He's become a big deal at this point. Obviously, he's in Chicago. He mentions about going to Chicago quite a bit throughout the movie. So he's there, and he does well. He finishes up his set and walks in who at this point?
Walks in Stack and Mary. Yep. So turns out that he just couldn't bring himself, or that Smoke couldn't bring himself to kill Stack, and so just left him hidden in the building. So and it was locked too, so the Klansmen couldn't get in to get him. The Sun couldn't get him, and then they show Mary running away into the night. So she must have gone and hid somewhere. And so really, it's kind of a happy ending for them too. You find out that Smoke and Stack Mary and Stack have been living, together as vampires, but living together for 60 years. They got to be together, which they weren't going to be able to do in life. So, so you find out that whole thing happens. The outfits go crazy. The 90s outfits when Stack walks in.
Timberland boots, Coochie sweaters. That's what the fashion was then, man. Yeah. Earrings. Yeah. It was the attention to detail was fascinating.
It was amazing. So
very fascinating. So at this point, Sammy's offered the chance for eternal life, and Sammy was like, "Nah, I think I've seen enough of this place."
Yeah,
but that night was the best. Before everything went down, was the best night of his life.
Yeah, they do go back. They say it was the one night we were truly free. Like the day. Well, what he says is before the sun went down. Is that day was the last day we were truly free. And he talks about he still has nightmares about the night, but the day is the happy memory.
Right, because I suppose that everything is taken, the juke joint and everything takes place on a Saturday, in order for Sammy to want to be back at church with his father, the following Sunday to deliver whatever else. But we ran a little long tonight, but this movie was very deserving of it. If you haven't seen it, then you definitely should. Even if you wasn't considering seeing, I think you should. Neither one of us sits on any of the awards panels, anything like that. But early talks are that this is probably going to be the front runner for a lot of awards. Director of the year, movie of the year, actor of the year. If they don't win,
more of the year,
if they don't win a lot of, they got to. But this was fascinating, man. It was a good movie. I really enjoyed it. I think me not watching the trailer, and even though you said it didn't give a lot, maybe it did me a ton of justice. But I think the director Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan are probably going to be linked at the hip, like they've done work before on Black Panther.
Every single movie he's done, Michael B. Jordan's been in, actually.
Yeah, Fruitvale Station and those kind of things. So I think this is going to be the tag team that we see for a very, 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 very long time, man. But any closing thoughts, Jacob?
No, just that. Hey, I mentioned some little criticisms about the vampire stuff and all of that. I gotta say, this was not, and I don't know if you agree, but this was not a vampire movie. It was so much more than that. It was a movie about culture and history and love with vampires, in the background. And I think that's why the vampires were pretty simple, garlic, wood, sun, hurt them all. I think we didn't want to pull away from anything else. And I have to say, this is probably one of my all-time favorite movies. And I say that as someone who's watched a lot of movies. I'm probably going to watch it again now tonight because just talking about it, I'm excited.
It was that good. And even if this isn't your particular genre of movie, I think it's deserving of watching. I know they mentioned it's still in the theaters now. They mentioned it's going to be available on streaming HBO within the next month or so.
I think July 12th is when it's coming.
Yeah, if you can get to the movie and watch this, but hopefully by the time we release this podcast, maybe it won't be in the movies anymore, man. But watching it streaming will do you justice. I would say black out the room, turn off the phones,
get some surround sound.
Yeah. Do not disturb for 2 hours because you want to try to catch as much as you can while watching this movie, and you'll enjoy it. And for those listening to the podcast, let us know what you think. We want to hear your views on it as well. This is a two-stream communication, right? So, and we'll be back to do it again. We have some movies coming up that we've already watched. Our only rule is that we don't speak about the movies before we get on the podcast. That's the only.
Yep.
That is the only rule. We want to keep it pure. We want to.
Yeah, and if you have any suggestions about what movie we should do next, let us know.
We're open for any ideas. I think my wife mentioned something about maybe just coming back and doing a quick segment about bonus scenes and things that didn't make the final cut. And I think that's a fantastic idea. And, we're two optometrists that are looking for, people know that we check eyes, right? But we want to give you another side of us that we think that you will enjoy. I just going back, I remember my first movie my father ever took me to see was Terminator 2. I've been hooked ever since, man. Yeah, I've been hooked ever since, man. But we just want to show you a different side of the industry, relate optometry to the movie going experience, and hopefully it provides for a unique podcast and with unique content. For sure,
yeah. Guys, this is what we do: movies and eyes. We love it. We're excited to bring more to you for sure.
Perfect. Good night. Yeah, good night, you guys. We'll talk soon, and let us know what you think. Peace.
Later.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Realize Podcast. Be sure to give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok. And remember, don't miss the sequel. Get your eyes checked.
See you next week.